Hello, everybody, and welcome back to another episode of Learn with Dr. G. That's me. Today, we are going to be talking about Bash, which I'm very excited about. Sorry, this a really long cord for my headphones, and it was getting tangled in my chair, which I'm really excited about. So we're going to talk a little bit about what Bash is, and we're going to start exploring some of the commands. If you've been following my What You Didn't Learn in School video series, which you can find at aka.ms/learnwithdrg/WYDILIS underscore videos here on the screen, and I'll throw it in the chat as well, then you will have seen that we've used some Bash commands in the past. We've been doing some ls and some cd, and we're going to be doing a lot more today. So I'm very excited. Yes, Mohammed, I will share the links in just about 3 seconds. I thought I just did on YouTube, but then apparently it didn't send. Hello, Lakshmi, I hope I pronounced your name right. So as always, please feel free to ask questions in the comments. And today we are going to be following this Learn module here that I will put in the comments. And yeah, if you want to go ahead and follow along, you're welcome to. This module, as have our other modules, can be done completely in the browser. So if you don't have a Linux machine or Linux-based machine anywhere, if you're not on one right now and you do want to follow along, you will be able to follow along in the browser. But I will be showing you things on my machine, specifically using WSL, which is Windows Subsystem for Linux. And there actually is going to be a future episode of Learn with Dr. G, where we are going to be exploring Windows Subsystem for Linux, which is bit.ly/ape13_WSL. So you can check that one out. That is the YouTube link. So if you want to set a reminder, you can do that. One thing you'd like to learn today is how Bash is different from command prompt or PowerShell. Awesome. One thing that we are going to be doing is, in future episodes, an episode specifically on PowerShell. Let me see. Let me pull up my schedule here. I've got PowerShell coming up, I think, next. Yes, PowerShell is next. We're going to be using a Unix shell with specifically focused on regex. The following week, we're going to be doing some REST APIs. The week after that, and then we're going to be jumping into WSL. So we'll focus today mostly on Bash, and then in the future episodes, we can kind of compare and contrast as we go along. And yes, Rahul, you're in Sydney. Welcome. And you're in the book, Bash Quick Start. Awesome. So if there's anything that I'm missing or I'm misspeaking, please feel free to share in the comments. All right, let's go ahead and get started. Let me just do a quick reminder of this wonderful code of conduct. So essentially, this code of conduct is just saying, let's be kind to one another. Please be kind to me. Be kind to each other. I will be kind to you. Our goal here is to learn and share resources. So let's go ahead and get started. All right. So, oh my gosh, that is not zoomed in enough at all. Let's see there. Let's zoom in. This is the Introduction to Bash Learn module. Learn is 100% free. And if you sign up with an account, then you can use the sandbox, which is also 100% free, all within your Learn browser. The account is just a Microsoft account. It's not an Azure account. So you don't have to put in a credit card or anything like that. And again, today we're going to be focusing a little bit on Bash. We're going to talk a little bit about what Bash is, some of the commands, and we're going to actually do some stuff. Awesome. Thanks, James. Yeah, we'll talk a little bit about it. Today I might focus mostly on Bash just so that we can get some of the common terminology together. And then as we go over the next couple episodes, we'll do some of those. And then I can also make some shorter videos where I just kind of do a comparison between things, especially after we have those longer ones to kind of call back to. Hello to Sweden. All right. So what I was thinking was what we could do is mainly have me jumping into my Ubuntu terminal here. You can see I was playing around with some stuff here. Oops. Let me come up here and let me do this really quickly. And then do this really quickly. And I will zoom in right now. Okay, sorry, I thought that I had that set up and then I realized that I didn't. Okay, I might need to zoom out for a couple of things, but this is what we're going to be focusing on today. I wanted to jump straight into my WSL terminal because the first way that I learned how Bash worked and explored Bash was on a terminal. I was on a Ubuntu box at school, and then I used a Mac. And that was pretty much what I did up until about 2 years ago when I started using Windows as well. And so I am particularly a fan of the Ubuntu terminal, Bash terminal. And so when I installed WSL or Windows Subsystem for Linux, this is what I jumped into. Hello to Poland and Canada. I love that this stream, you know, this time is it's hard to find a good time, but I love that this stream has people from just all over the world. This is awesome. Sydney, Sweden, Poland, Canada. This is great. All right, so let's talk a little bit about what Bash is. Okay, so basically, Bash is a shell program, and it sends the commands that you're writing that are in kind of English to the operating system to perform specific tasks on your behalf. There are two main shells that we're going to be focusing on in this series. One is PowerShell, which we'll talk about, I said next week, right? And then this one is Bash. And Bash is specifically a shell for Linux systems. Now, if you're using WSL, you can use Bash on a Windows system. There are other shells for Linux, as James was mentioning, CSH and ZSH. Yeah, command line interpreter. That's a great way of describing it. Thank you. There are other shells, which I don't think we're going to talk specifically about them in future ones, but again, after we kind of get the basics of this down, we can definitely do that. What is Ubuntu running on? So this is running on, well, it's WSL, so it's running on Windows. It's just a subsystem of Linux on Windows. It's really awesome. We'll talk about that in a future episode. Again, that future episode is here. So if you wanted to head over there and click a reminder, you can get an intro to that. Yes, thank you. Even though Bash is so universal to every open source project, meaning like a lot of open source projects will give you the Bash commands to be able to interact with that project, etc. The syntax is very weird. I agree. And that's why we're doing this entire stream, because it can be weird. And full disclosure, I will still look up Bash commands that I don't use often. So there might have been a time when I used certain commands every single day, and then I didn't use them for 5 years, and then I need to use it again, and I'm going to look it up. So I will show you ways to look information up all within your terminal, but also, search engines are your friend. Okay, so yes, basically, it's essential. Bash is essentially this kind of universal interface to the system beneath where the humans are touching, right? To the operating system, in this case, Linux. And in Unix/Linux, basically everything is a file. We talked a little bit about this when we were talking about Git and how a folder doesn't really mean anything, and everything is kind of a file. Git is only tracking files, and the metadata of that file, the path to where that file is, that's where folders are captured. But an empty folder doesn't really mean nothing. But what is that Git Bash? Git Bash. What is Git Bash? Oh, okay. What I'm showing here. No, this is not. This is WSL. But Git Bash is another way, I believe. I actually haven't used, yeah, it looks like it is an emulation layer for a Git command line experience on Windows is what Git Bash is. This one is WSL though. All right, so essentially it's that. Essentially, it's this interface between you, a human who needs to perform commands on your computer, and then the computer behind it. And, you know, when we first started out, you didn't have like all of these applications and click and run and mouse and folders, etc. So you would do everything within this terminal experience. Okay. So let's get started with a couple of things. So first of all, I have created a folder in here, and some of the stuff that I'm going to do is going to be slightly repetitive because I'm going to introduce a couple of commands here, and then we're going to follow a little bit with the Learn modules following. So then that way you can follow along with me. And if you have questions, we can dive deeper into those questions. But essentially, the way that Bash, the way you interface with Bash is through commands. And this is not a command, but essentially it looks like this. Okay, so every command has a name for that command. So that's where command is here. In addition to that, a command can have options. So if you ever see this syntax here with the square brackets, it means that it's not a requirement, right? That is potentially there are options for that command. And then potentially there are arguments for that command. And we'll show these through a series of different things as we're going through. So a command name with potentially options and potentially arguments. And that's really the biggest thing that you need to remember is that there's a command with options and arguments. Okay. So that's the basics right there. For example, ls is one of the most common commands that you might run. ls stands for list. And what I've done here is I said, hi, can you list all of the contents of this current directory? And my Ubuntu terminal said, sure, no problem. It's nothing. You have nothing in this directory, which is true. I've just created this directory because we're going to put some files here and play around with some stuff. And there's nothing in here right now. This is the same. ls is kind of the same as just double clicking a folder and opening it. It's just kind of seeing what's in there, right? Hi, Salman. Options are like flags. Yes. So this is great point. Options are like flags, like -a, -h, etc. Yes, and we'll show some of these in just a minute. And yes, this is a Windows Terminal app. This is WSL. So right here is where you can find the WSL Learn with Dr. G show that we'll have in the future. All right, so ls-l. ls-l. This is an example. Thank you, Tien Sturm. ls, here's an example of having those options, -l. And -l is going to also provide you with additional information. For example, there's nothing in here. If we did have a file in here, let's go ahead and do that right now. Again, we're going to kind of jump around a little bit in the beginning. I'm going to just stay within this terminal right here, and I'm going to type in vi, which is the text editor, essentially the code editor inside of the terminal, so it doesn't open up into a new window. And I'm just going to write notes.txt. So I'm going to create this notes.txt file. Hi, de Colombia, welcome. So I now have this notes.txt file open in this same terminal window right here. You can see that right now there's only one line. We can see that in a few ways. Right here, you can see that the top line doesn't have that tilde. And these ones just mean, look, these are not lines in the file. This is the only line in the file and there's nothing on it right now. And we can also see that information down here, that the only lines you have is 0 to 1, like you only have one line, right? So we can just say like, I don't know, oops, see, and I did it. So when you're in Vim, the first thing that you need to do to be able to actually write anything inside of Vim is to type I. I puts you in insert mode. Yeah, insert mode. That means you can start typing. Okay. So I don't know. I'm just going to say this is going to be my notes file. All right. So right here, I have one line with 34 characters, and I'm still in insert mode. To get out of insert mode, I type escape. So I'm no longer in insert mode. And that 34th character is gone because I didn't end up typing anything there. Or sorry, no. Okay, I'm at position 33 right before the E there. And then if I want to save this file and exit out of this editor, I type colon, which puts me into the position of being able to essentially give the editor application essentially commands. And I'm going to say W and Q. So W by itself is write. So you're writing the contents to the file that you have open. So we're writing, this is going to be my notes file to notes.txt. And Q quits. So I can do just W, I can do just Q, or I can do WQ, which is fairly common every time you kind of quit out of a file. Now, if I do ls, I can see we have notes.txt. If I do ls-l again, I can see that I've got this notes.txt here, and it was created. So I get some additional information. And if I do ls-a, I can see I have additional things in here. I've got this dot. The dot represents the current directory that you're in. Dot, dot. This represents the parent directory, the one directly above us, and then the file that I have in here. And I can do the same thing here. Oops. You can also have multiple options and string them together. So ls is list, that's the command I'm running. And then the list of options that I have here is A and L. So now I'm getting additional information about each of these, the hidden files or directories, as well as my notes.txt. Yes, long listing. Thank you. -L stands for long listing. All right, I'm just going to go up really quickly and make sure I didn't miss anything in the chat. Too many commands with emulation with Microsoft. Yeah, so that's why I like WSL, because I am used to Linux machines. I am used to using Bash. That is what I've used almost my entire career. And so I love WSL, not because Windows wants me to try something new, but because it is what I am personally used to. Yep, calling Q to exit Vim. Hi from Zambia. Welcome. And yes, I am on WSL, the Windows subsystem for Linux. To use Vim, is it necessary to install something on Windows integrated in the command line? So, and now I can't remember when it comes to using PowerShell, but if you're using Bash, no, you don't have to install anything extra. There are additional versions, but no, you don't have to. And yes, classic VI jailbreak. Yes, WSL. And yes, I also love Bash, and you love Perl and SQL Server. Awesome. That's equality to use a tree visualized command. Yes, I needed WSL installed to use Vim, but if you have a Bash terminal, then you do not, or shell, you do not need anything else. Okay, so I could remember that ... is essentially my parent directory. So I could also do ls ... and that's going to show me all of the contents of my parent directory or parent folder. Okay, I'm still inside, oops, I'm still inside Bash. You can tell where I am right here, I'm still inside bash. That's still the directory I'm in, but I am listing the contents of the parent directory, which contains the folder bash, which is the directory bash, which is the one I'm in, and another directory called cats, which is from a previous stream that we did. So I could also do something like ls-cats, and that's going to show me what's inside of that cats directory. So I go up to my parent directory, then I go into the cats directory. All right. Yeah, questions around this? What are all of these things right here? So this is all of the permissions for those particular files. So I honestly can't remember exactly. There's like user, system, and admin or something like that. I rarely am messing with all of the permissions, but we can definitely explore that in future ones as well. So basically, this is just saying that I have read, write, and execute access across all of them. And this is, I believe D is saying that it's a directory. I can't exactly remember though. Yes, thank you, directory. It is directory. I was like 99% sure, but then I forgot for a minute. So read, write, and execute. So all of my files, I am able to read, write, and execute. Correct. It is not required to go inside of the folder to be able to look what's inside of it. I can also add in the commands, right? So ls-a cats. And I can see inside of this one, because this was from our Git Learn with Dr. G episode, not only do we have the ... and the ... but we also have our .git folder and our .git ignore file, which we didn't see the first time because those are hidden files because you don't really need them for the purposes of writing your code. They're more metadata information for the purposes of version control. Directory, user, group, and all. Thank you. So when we were looking at this, oops, goodness. When we were, oh my gosh. Okay. So when we were looking at this, we've got, this is a directory. This is for the user. This is for the group. And this is for all. Others. Thank you. All right. So let's say you wanted to create a new directory. So we're inside of our bash directory right now. One of my favorite commands that's actually not in the Learn module is clear. I don't know about you, but when I've got just a ton of stuff, it just really confuses me. Clear just kind of clears your view. If you scroll up, all of that's still there. But I like to have a nice clear. I don't know about you, but my favorite commands is clear ls, clear ls. I can't tell you how many times I've typed clear ls. So many that I ended up making, you can actually make like shortcut files. You can actually make like shortcut commands where it's a string of commands. So at one point I ended up making a clear ls command so I could just type that because I would do it every single time. And CD, yes, but clear and ls are kind of like, I do that just so many times. Okay, so now I'm still in my bash directory. Let's say I wanted to create a new directory. To do that, we do mkdir, that's make directory. But let's say we didn't know how to use this. One thing that you can do is type man, which is a command, a bash command, and then make directory or the argument, which is another bash command. Man is to open up the manual. And this is to say, I want the manual page specific to make directory. So this will open it up. And, you know, it's not, doesn't look the best when I'm zoomed in. But this will open this up. And I can just kind of scroll with my arrow keys up and down. We can see here that the name of this command is mkdir, and the purpose is to make directories. This is a synopsis. You can kind of think about it like a function header in a sense. So you've got the command name, and then the options, and then the directory. And then there's a more specific description down here. As we scroll through this documentation, we can see that there are some specific options that we can have. -M or -- mode is to set the file mode. So chmod, that's how I like to say it. That's for setting the particular permissions. So when we were looking at the RWX, you can actually set the permissions for a particular directory as you are creating it. -P or -- parents. So if there isn't already a directory that would be that parent, it will make it. I'll show you that in just a second. -V -- verbose, print a message for each created directory. -Z, set a SE Linux security context. I've actually never used this one. Again, every single time you're going to be doing anything in particular with Bash, you're likely, like anytime you're going to be shifting into doing new things, you're likely going to have to look up the documentation and try a few things to make sure that you know exactly how everything is working. I am not claiming to be the Bash expert. I do use Bash, the Bash shell often, though, in my every single day development. But I just use a subset at the moment. Context, help, and version. You can keep just going down, or you can type Q to quit and exit out of this view. Okay, so for example, make directory. Let's just make a directory called test. So now when I do ls, I can see test is in there. Remember that -P thing? We could make a directory -P of test2 and test1. And what that did was created test2, and then now we'll do cd. cd is change directory, which is essentially like going into the other directory. So that's really like double clicking into a folder. ls is kind of just taking a sneak peek. So not only inside of Bash do we have test2, but when I cd into test2 and do ls, I also have test1. I'm going to cd or change directory back up to Bash. And I'm going to try doing the make directory with multiple without that -P just to see what happens. So if you don't have that -P option, then Bash is going to give you an error message. And it's going to say, you know what? There is no such file or directory, test3. So I couldn't possibly make a directory, test1. Now, if I made directory test3, and then I made directory test1, it would work. I was able to avoid the -P option because I first made test3. So this error where test3 didn't exist, it now exists, so I can make that. That was a lot. I'm just going to check the comments super quick. Yes, CLS. I know there is, yeah, an alias, CLS, clear, and ls. Yes, that is what I do. Great question. Yeah, so we showed command option arguments. So we just did make directory and then the name or the directory name that you wanted to make. Sorry, just reading through. No worries that you're late. This is recorded also. Can you modify -P to make a folder above the current level with .. Oh, let's try it. Make directory. So we're going to go .. Oh, sorry, -P, .. test3. That's 4. Of course you can, because .. is just the name of the parent directory, or kind of a link to the parent directory. You don't need to know what the name exactly is. It is, well, it wouldn't work anyways, because that's not a, yes, .. is essentially just a directory. So yes, you can. Okay. We've just made a ton of directories, and it can get a little bit confusing. So One other command that I really like, especially when I'm making a lot of directories, and I have my WSL terminal like this, where you can only see the current folder that I'm in. That's actually a setting that you can set. Another thing that you can do is pwd. And this gives us the path to our working directory, or the path to the directory / folder that you are currently in. So this is the path to my bash folder or directory. It's in WSL. I'm using WSL, so this is where my stuff exists. I've got users, Sarah, desktop, WYDLIS for what you didn't learn in school, which is our series, and bash. So if we went into test 3, test 1, notice how I changed directory into this subdirectory here. And then I did pwd. You can see that now I'm in what you didn't learn in school, bash, test 3, test 1. All right. Clear, ls. I'm going to go back up. Oops. Notice to go back up twice, because I am in test 1, which, remember, the parent directory of test 1 is test 3. So this is test 3. The parent directory of that is bash. Now I'm back in bash. This is where I want to be. Okay. This is command line for Linux. Yes. No. So you can write. So there's a question around bash code and writing things in an editor. So you can string together bash commands and save those into a file, which I'll reference later, and be able to execute all of those commands kind of in that order. But bash is a shell, which is basically the interface between what you are writing as a human and what your computer will perform. Do not do rm-rf. We'll talk about rm in just a minute, but don't do that. All right. Yes, cd and tilde. So, oh, I can't remember. Can't remember the other way to see the files like a tree directory. Someone said like this. I've actually never done it that way. This looks like it was the last one that I just did. So this looks like it was, oh, sorry. So I changed directory into the last directory that I was in, which was test 1. That's cool. I've never done that one before. All right, so now we're back in bash with all of these. To go home, yes, going home. So if we look at this pwd, we're really deep into our file system. We're in Sarah desktop, WYDLIS, and bash. If I were to type cd and tilde, like that, that is going to take me to my home directory, which is here. Not super useful because now I'm in this wonky place that I don't want to be, because I want to be back on my desktop, which is on a mounted drive through WSL, because it's a little complicated. But if you're doing this inside of the Learn module, it's not as complicated. I'm going to use my handy dandy cd dash to get back to my bash. All right. So we saw that you can do the, like, open up the manual, man make directory. But another thing that you can do is make directory, make directory and then -- help, which is an option. -- help is an option to the make directory command. And in this case, it will open up a kind of like small version, and it's going to print it right here in the terminal for us of the like documentation. So man make directory, mkdir, that opens up the manual. So if we saw it again, it actually opens this up, right? And if I were to just keep going all the way down to the bottom, I can't get back to my bash interface until I type Q. But doing make directory help is just going to print it right here inside of the terminal for us. Yes. So you can type up arrow to get the previous commands, and we'll do that in just a minute. I'll explain that better. All right, so let's say that we have notes.txt. Let's say that we also had some other files. Let's say we had test.py. So I'm going to do vi test.py, and I'm just going to type I and say this is going to be a Python file for later. Escape :wq, and then I'm going to also do vi solution.py, and I'm going to do I, and I'm going to say I'm pretending that this is a solution file. I don't know. Escape :wq. And I'm also going to do, let's say, vi solution.txt. Why not? This is a text file with the solution. Escape :wq. Okay, so now I have these 4 files as well as 3 other directories inside of my bash directory. One thing that I can do is I can just list out my .txt files. And I can do this with this handy dandy symbol, right? Oh my gosh, right here, the asterisk. And what this does is it's essentially a wildcard. So what I'm saying is I want all of the files that end. It can have anything at the beginning, as many characters, I don't care what it is, but it has to end in .txt. So it's only going to show me these 2. I could do the opposite. I can say I want only the files that start with solution. Or I can do, you know what, I want only the files that have anything and then a T and then anything, then T, like that. But these wildcards, what do you think is going to be listed here? So it's actually going to show not only the txt files, but also the test directory, because I said anything before the T, which can include nothing, then a T, then anything in the middle, and then ending in a T. So the only files or folders that are ending in a T are notes.txt, solution.txt, and test. And so it's going to list those 3. All right. Just looking through. Yes, JSON serialization in Bash is not something we're doing today, but yes. Okay, awesome. Another thing you can do is kind of have multiple of these. So we could say, for example, that I want anything that is ending in txt or in Python or py, like py. So let me just go ahead and do vim vi, essentially the same. We're going to do a test.java. Why not? And just say this. Oops, I forgot to do I. This is a Java file. Cool. Okay. So now I've got these files. I can just say, you know what? I only want to list my star.py and my star.java files. Okay, so I can kind of just notice that there's a space in between these. So this is just kind of like all of the list of things that I want to show. Cool. All right. There are a ton of other ways of using these wildcards. And I'm not going to go through 100% of them because I want to make sure that we have a little bit of time for some of the other stuff that I want to show you today. But I encourage you to check out the Learn module at aka.ms/learnwithdrg/intro to bash so that you can see those. Okay, before we jump into the browser, I did want to show you one other thing. Another command like ls where you can just kind of view what's inside of a particular directory, but this time being able to just view what's inside a particular file. So I can type cat test.java, and that's going to just print out in the terminal here the contents of that file. Now, vi or vim test.java, just like when we did man mkdir, that's going to open this up inside of our terminal, like in this new type of experience window-ish. It's all the same window, but it's going to open it up into this new view where to get out of it and get back to the bash command prompt, I need to do :wq. And when I was opening up the man pages, I had to do q. Cat is a way of just displaying it here in the terminal. All right. Yes, also, cat is useful for creating a file that is empty. So if we look at here and I wanted to create a solution.java, wait, no, not solution. You could totally do that. Why didn't that work? Am I forgetting something? I don't know why that didn't just work. I swear you could do that. I know, I feel like there should be a dog command now too. Oh, okay. Yeah, we'll get into the piping in just a minute. Touch, thank you, touch. Solution.java. Thank you. Sorry, yes, brain fart. Touch is how you create an empty file. So that's basically if that file exists, it's going to update the last time this file was accessed. And if that file does not exist, then it'll create that file. And we actually did cover that in the Intro to Git series episodes, so you can go check that out. But now you can see that solution.java is there. And if we were to do cat solution.java, nothing's in there. Notice what I just did, cat, and then I did SO tab. That's actually going to autocomplete for me as much as it can because we have solution.java, we have solution.py, and we have solution.txt. If I do tab, it's going to list all of the potential next steps for that file or directory or path or whatever we're doing. And then if I were to do J, tab again, it'll autocomplete for me. All right. Awesome. So we covered most of the basic commands. One thing that I did want to cover, though, real quick is RM. So RM is remove. So if I were to do rm solution.java, ls, it's now gone. If I were to try to do rm test, I can't because it's a directory. But if I really, really wanted to remove test, which let's remember what's inside of test, nothing. I really want to remove it. rm-r test, which is a recursive remove. So it's going to go into the test folder and remove everything inside of there. If there were subfolders, it'll go into that folder and remove everything, et cetera, et cetera. rm-r test did work, and now that test folder is gone. I can also do rm star.txt. That's going to remove all my txt files. And if you want to just make sure that you're not doing anything wrong, one thing that you can do is rm-i star.py, because maybe you've got a ton of Python files and you think you're ready to remove all your Python files, but maybe not quite yet. This is going to go one by one and say, are you sure about this one? Solution.py? Yes, I'm sure. Okay, well, what about test.py? Oh, no. I needed that one. All right, so now test.py did not get deleted while solution.py did. So that right there, rm is our command, -i was our option there, and then star.py was our argument where we used the asterisk wildcard to say everything that ended in py. And yes, there is in fact a -rf, for example, test3. This is a force remove. Now, sometimes this is useful. Sometimes we do want to forcefully remove something regardless of why our computer is telling us we might not want to. You have to be extremely, extremely careful with RM-F in general, but especially RM-RF, because that will recursively remove every single thing in that folder, regardless of anything. It'll not stop you. I'm okay with here because this is a test folder, but that'll remove everything. So be very, 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 very careful. All right. How do I zoom and draw on the screen? That is called Zoom It. It's a handy dandy Windows thing. You can find it here in these docs. All right. How did I highlight a folder? Someone else asked over on Learn TV. And this is just WSL's folder syntax highlighting, or Bash's WSL's syntax highlighting. That's all this is. I did not change it. There are ways that you can actually customize that. And then, will the stuff we do today also apply to Git Bash? So I haven't used Git Bash too much, but I imagine the commands are going to be the same, if not very similar. All right. Let's do a couple of other things real quick in the last few minutes that we have. We have test.java and test.py. Let's say that we had some kind of file that we needed to copy. This might be relevant if you had like other types of files, but let's just say, like, you know, look, we've got all these test files. I'm going to need to copy something. One thing that you can do is copy test.py into test2.py. And what that's going to do is create another file called test2 that has the same contents as test.py. Now, you do have to be careful here, though, because if I were to do copy test.java into test2.py, this doesn't stop me. Okay? So cat test.py, cat test2.java, or sorry, test.java, and cat test2.py. Why could this potentially be bad or surprising? The reason is, sorry, I'm just trying to like show everything here. When we did this copy up here, test2.py didn't exist. So copying test.py into a new file called test2.py was great. But when we did that right here, test2.py totally already existed, and it already had this contents in it right here. And the command just let us do that. The copy command's like, sure, I guess you know what you want. That's fine. And it replaced all of the contents with what was in the .java file. Again, a way to potentially avoid that. So I'm pushing up here because I don't want to rewrite all of that command over again. So up goes to cat test2.py, up again goes to cat test.java, up again goes to cat test.py, up again goes to my copy. If I were to, let's say, do this again, just to kind of get them back to the same, we can once again use that -I, or it's I for interactive, but it's basically a way for you to confirm what it is that you want to do. So I'm going to come back up to that Java copy. I'm going to come all the way over here, do -I. So now it's going to say, hey, test2.py already exists. Are you sure you want to overwrite that? And I can say yes or no at this point. Now, if I were doing that same thing, but this time I was doing test3.py, it's not going to ask me because test3.py didn't exist. So there's nothing to overwrite. All right. I'm glad that you're having fun. Move is another one. Yes. So move, MV, is another great one. We can just say, you know what? I want everything that is test2, maybe test2 dot star. I want to move that into test2 folder and keep the same names. So now test2.py got moved into the test2 folder. Okay, so that command again was just move and then whatever file it was. So why don't we move test.star, everything that is test.anything. So test.java and test.py. Let's go ahead and move that into test2, test1. And then if I do ls test2, test1, I can see those got moved in, and ls and bash no longer have them. That's another one on move. The last thing that I just wanted to cover briefly was the ps command, which is the currently running processes. So ps-e will list all of the processes that are currently running on this machine, which right now is essentially just what I'm running here in the command bash, and there's an init process, and then ps because it was in the process of running. You can also do ps-ef, and ef will show you a bit more information about these processes. For example, who initiated them. So in this case, I initiated starting bash, and I initiated the ps process. The PID, just kind of additional information. The last time it was the start time of it, et cetera, et cetera. These commands are particularly useful for sysadmin folks. And I highly recommend that you check out the Learn module to be able to explore more of that. All right. How can I move recursively, or does that copy all of the contents from within the file? So move, can you do that? -r test2 test1 star, or let's say star, or, yeah, I don't think you can recursively move. I was like 99% sure, but I don't think you can recursively move because it's one file to a particular, or like you can use wildcards, but like a particular file type to a particular location. But we can do --help here and scroll up a bit. I don't think that there is a recursive move. Some of the arguments. Yeah, feel free to share documentation in the chat if you have that. Demonstrate with multiple sources. I don't know what multiple sources is. If you'd like to elaborate, feel free to. All right, couple minutes left, and let's do a couple of these piping commands because these can be fun. All right, so ls right now has test2 and test3.py. I can do ls, and then I can do this. And what that does is it creates a new file called listing.txt, and it puts in there the output of the ls command. So bash will run the ls command, but rather than printing it to the screen, it'll say save that into a new file called listing.txt. All right. There are a ton, I can't believe we're already out of time. Gosh, I need to spend like 6 hours on this. There are a ton of other things that you can do. So for example, another one that I wanted to show was, let's try this one. So let's do cat, well, we just did cat listing.txt. So let's do cat listing.txt, but instead of printing it out right here in our terminal, let's format it using like this. FMT is another command. So we're going to take the output from that. Then we're going to run it through that format command. And then we can, I don't know, try to print it, but I don't have a printer. So we're just going to go ahead and just, it formats it slightly differently. It would look better if our contents were interesting. So we could, for example, we could maybe do something like, I don't have a good example on this one because I don't have a ton of processes running, but in any case. All right, we're pretty much out of time, which I always hate. But one thing that I did want to make sure that you knew was, is this not, there we go. As a reminder, what we just did today, even if you don't have a Linux machine or you don't have WSL installed on your Windows machine, what you can do is head over into this Learn module, which is aka.ms/learnwithdrg/intro to bash. And if you have a Microsoft account, a free Microsoft account, not an Azure account, but a free Microsoft account, you can use up to 20 sandboxes a day for up to 2 hours per sandbox. And that will create this Azure Cloud Shell environment, which will be a bash shell right here in your browser. And you can follow all of these different commands to be able to walk through essentially what we just did. This will also, one neat thing is that it also includes some other files in here that we didn't have access to because I was running it on my local machine. So for example, ls-a dot Azure commands 203 !**log. Sorry, I forgot that that's going to be a typo. That's going to print all of the commands that were run in 2020 anything. So 2020, 2021, 2022, well, not possible, that were log files. So this is, sorry, not all the commands that were run, but like all of the log files that were created as a result of running Azure commands, essentially. You can head through this Learn module and check out all of these. And there are additional things that we didn't get a chance to fully cover, like someone just mentioned the difference between a single caret and a double caret. And we do work through that. We actually work through killing processes here. And bloop, bloop, bloop. Oh, I guess we didn't have that in there. But I can make a video on the single command versus, or sorry, the single caret versus the double caret. Perfect. So yes, this is the MS Dev channel on Linux, on GNU Linux. Yes, it is. All right, so that's the basics for what I have for you today. I want to thank you all for not only attending, but also being so active in the chat. And if you wouldn't mind filling out this quick survey, it helps me to make sure that the content that I am bringing to you all is content that you want to see. So you just head over to aka.ms/reactor/survey with the code. And actually, oh, darn it, that's the wrong code. The code is 12883. I'm so sorry. Wrong code that is on the screen here. I don't know how I did that. 12883 is the actual code that you want to do. And don't forget that we do actually have an entire set of these video series at aka.ms/learnwithdrg/WYDLIS_videos, where you can find all of the videos, including this one, my recap videos. We did Git and Bash. Sorry, we did Git and GitHub, and in the future, we'll be doing PowerShell, WSL. And if you do want to check out that WSL one, that is at bit.ly/ape13_WSL. As always, if you do any of these things that we covered today and you are proud of yourself or just excited or you're like, hey, I did it, please feel free to share with me at Dr. Gethels on pretty much every social media. And until next time, thank you so much for joining, and I will see you next Tuesday. Have a great one, everyone. Bye.